To open this new presentation, we will welcome Pieter Colpaert, who's Professor of Knowledge on Web Scale at Ghent University, IDLab and imec. So good afternoon, Pieter.
Hi all. I
Hello.
did not hear the announcement, but I guess that's I'm.
It is over to you, indeed.
Yes. All right. Okay. Good. Thank you everyone for granting me the floor for a couple of minutes here. I launched 2 years ago at ENDORSE the first version of the linked data event stream specification. And I'm more than happy to today give a small update about it, in the sense that I think it will play a huge role in this new thing that is popping up, that is often been spoken about today. It's data spaces. And for me, if we look at querying data spaces or asking queries, asking questions throughout a vast amount of data sets in a certain data space, then we often see this image to be reality. Is the fact that that data engineers, smart as we are, what we are going to try to do is to first and foremost, make an application. That application will ask very smart questions towards a server, and a server is going to make sure that that database that's behind it is populated with all the necessary data sets. Now, most of the research at this point is being put, I think, and this is like also the counter movement, I believe, that happens with data spaces, is that first we spend a lot of time thinking about what should that API on top of the database, what should that look like, while in fact the real problem that we maybe need to fix is how do we automate data integration before the API that we will start querying. So that's something I'm really concerned about how are we going to do that. And that data before the API, that can be public data sets, can be base registries, can be governmental data sets, can be more shared data sets, but can also be personal data, I believe. And with the entire advent of the Solid project that is coming up, and the My Data principles and IDSA and so on, I believe that also there we now have a good movement going on, that we can try to really focus on the automation of data integration through data spaces. And of course, if you say data spaces, you say IDSA, you say Gaia X, you say all these, all the recent trends in the European Commission's agenda that's popping up. And given that we really achieve to fully automate all kind of legal policies. The GDPR is helpful there, but also like automating GDPR policies. If we can make sure that contractual agreements between companies are automated thanks to all these agreements, and then if we also automated fully the semantic interoperability thanks to linked data with standardized vocabularies, as we are doing already for a couple of years now, then still I don't think that we have achieved a data space yet. Because given that we have that, what's then the best API to share a data set? And this has also been what I presented 2 years ago when I introduced it. It's like, yeah, if you have a data set and you want to publish it, then what we do from the linked data world is we put a Sparkle endpoint on top of that. However, there will be very smart people in the geospatial world that will say, hey, but I also want an OGC API on top of that, because that's Inspire compliant, and we also need to make sure that we work with that legislation as well. And then some other fancy new technology will stop by and will say, hey, we also want a piece of the cake. If you're a data publisher, you need to have a Sparkle endpoint. That's fine. You need to have an OGC API. That's fine. You need an auto-completion API. You need an NGS-ILD API. You need a GraphQL API, and so on and so forth. And at a certain moment, the data publishers will have so much work in publishing yet another API that will end up in a maintenance hell. They will not know what new data set anymore to publish there. So we need a different approach, and that's what linked data event streams came up with. Pretty basic, of course. It's not the thing of linked data event streams. I think we had so many initiatives in the past that did something similar, like OAI PMH, like a resource sync, like RSS atom feeds, and so on. That all had similar ideas. And this is actually just exactly the same idea, I guess. We're going to make sure that clients, that agents on the web can always keep in sync with a data set that they once started replicating. And this is the idea of linked data event streams. We're going to put an event source API online so that everyone can set up the API that they want. And that way we will automatically become or have an Inspire compliant API, because, hey, it's just a microservice you need to set up and need to always keep in sync with the event source that way. So this picture was like, tada, the solution, or could be seen as the solution. But I'm also really skeptical about that, because I don't believe that this is the full solution yet, because we simply cannot replicate the full web on a server of a third party. So for me, this is a replication hell, in the sense that you cannot keep copying the entire web towards your own machine. So we need a way in which we can discover more dynamically the right data set, but that we can also dynamically discover the right interface on top of that data set that will help us to solve a certain question. And this is, I think, the niftiness of linked data event streams, of why linked data event streams becomes really interesting. Because on top of that event source API, we now allow decentralized indexes on top of that event source, just like what you would do with a database. Like if a database answers too slowly, what do you do? I'm querying on this specific property. So what I'll do, I'll add an index to my system. My system will become slightly more expensive to host or to maintain, but that index, that will keep working. I will speed up these kind of queries. So I will prepare my system to answer a certain type of queries. Now, my proposal with linked data event streams is to decentralize that. Not only the event source should be able to be to enable certain indexes, we will enable that at the intermediary side. So intermediaries will be able to republish a certain data set with a certain locality, a locality that will make sure that certain members of your data set, certain items of your data set will be grouped together in the same fragment, so that if you're looking for everything in a certain geospatial region, for example, you will find them in all the same in the same page, and you will be able to descend a kind of search tree to come towards that specific page that contains the right data to answer your question at that time. However, if you're doing geospatial, if you have a geospatial API or geospatial fragmentation of your data, but you want to do auto-completion, then of course, you're dealing with the wrong kind of index. So I think we need to dynamically be able to discover all these different indexes. And if there's also a substring fragmentation, we should be able to dynamically select that one, if it's available on the web somewhere by someone, that we can select it, maybe through a DCAT catalog somewhere, that we're able to select it, and that we can also use it for in order to answer our specific question. So this is all these different types of fragmentation is really what we're working on right now, and what we're also building tooling for. And one particular example of that is that for auto-completion, in fact, we've been working on or we've been extending and working on a federated address search across the Netherlands, Belgium, and France by first and foremost republishing that as a linked data event stream, the data set, then taking that event stream, keeping it in sync on intermediary servers that would expose a substring fragmentation, of each of them separately, and now we can actually just add these data sets as to be queried data sets, and we can just have a cross-border substring search there, where we get addresses in the mix over multiple countries there. So that's something that we're working on in the terms of the Interoperable Europe program, and I can certainly more than recommend these kind of webinars that happen from time to time. I think the next one is on DCAT that you can follow as well. So my story about querying data spaces stops thinking about the initial picture where we have a lot of data sets, then one data engineer that just needs to make sure that we can build this centralized data store on which we can query. But I want to see data spaces as a whole combination of a lot of different indexes that can be set up by different parties and that can be paid for by different parties. But because I truly believe that, of course, the business model is of utmost importance there. We're dealing with open data at the source, but that doesn't mean that the source needs to be able to answer any question for you. No, they need to provide the data so that an intermediary with a kind of revenue model would also be able to answer questions across that base registry open data set, or maybe even shared or private data set that just needs an index on top of that. I believe there will be a kind of business model for the blue blocks on this picture. The blue blocks, I believe, will either be paid by the data publisher that wants to stimulate certain kind of reuse, that wants to make sure that the index is available to everyone. And on the other hand, it can also be that the blue blocks are being paid by a consortium of clients that need a certain index to be available. Tooling is at this moment available on our website. So if you check out tree.linkdatafragments.org, you will find a lot of different tooling that we've built in collaboration with Digital Flanders in the Flemish government. And all the building blocks there are fully open source.
Pieter, I'm sorry, can I ask you to quickly wrap up your 3 takeaways so that we still have time for a question?
Yes, because this is my last slide indeed,
Okay.
Is that my 3 takeaways are make sure that, 1, that you publish event streams and not just data dumps, because we want to make sure that everyone can build the indexes they want on that. 2, that now these views can evolve as fast as you want them. And in that way, we can turn on and turn off certain views and the data set itself won't disappear. And 3, at this moment, the tooling is getting gradually more and more available for everyone to use. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing so much information. And I'm sure a note has been taken of your invitation to your next webinar. So thanks for that. Pieter, I have a question here. How can we ensure not to have a maintenance hell in the linked data event streams?
Because the maintenance hell really stems from the fact that once an application has been coded against a specific API, you need to keep it online. Otherwise, that application is going to break. Instead, what I propose is to say, let's code that application not against one very specific API, but let's make sure that every time it will look at all the interfaces that's available, and at that time, the application should be able, through a querying SDK, it will always answer the same question, but the interfaces that it uses in order to answer that question can vary. It can be that at some point there is a SPARQL endpoint available, and then that SPARQL endpoint can be used for really fast answers. But on the other hand, maybe the European project is over and everything gets archived into then that SPARQL endpoint cannot be kept online anymore. Then I propose maybe we can go towards a more materializable or cacheable or archivable interface, for example, as a triple pattern fragments interface that still would allow you to answer these SPARQL queries, but maybe a little bit slower in that fashion. So depending on the budget available in the ecosystem, we will get the right APIs to be available, and the apps should always keep working. In worst case, a little bit slower if there's not enough finances available for the right interfaces at that time.
Thank you very much for this explanation, and thanks for being with us this afternoon, Pieter. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.